Well, what's up again there, guys? Brian here at 3DR Hater, bringing you another episode of the People's Questions, or I answer all awesome questions that you guys have sent me this past week. We got a pretty special episode for two main reasons. One I will explain at the end of the video, but mainly because this is the largest collection of newbies that I've had for an episode of the People's Questions in some time, so I must be doing something right. So the first question comes from Abil, and you want to know, will I ever make a collaboration video for my verse series? It's possible. I've spoken to another YouTuber about doing a collaboration video. We spoke about it back in September. We've actually already done a collaboration video, but for a certain movie review. You know, he's at the time right now, I think he's busy with projects, and I know I'm working on a couple things, and as far as I know, he's waiting for a specific game to come out, because maybe he just wants to get new footage, or maybe he wants to do a little bit more research, but it's really up to him whether he wants to continue going for it or not. So I'm not going to say it won't ever happen, but you know, only time will tell. The next question comes from Matt Cruz. He wants to know, who is my favorite actors? I can't really think of too many actors, but I'll just name one off the top of my head. I would go with Will Smith. I mean, back in the 90s, he could just do no wrong. He was by far my #1 favorite actor back in the 90s. But since then, he's done a number of films I thought were very, very questionable, and now his, let's just say his resume is not as impressive as I would have hoped back when I was younger. But he's still probably one of my favorite actors of all time to this day, because you know, he's just so charismatic, and he's such a great actor. But so I would have to say Will Smith, just off the top of my head. The next question comes from Tanuki Player. He wants to know, who is my favorite video game couple, or even favorite video game love story? I will go with Nathan Drake and Elena Fisher from the Uncharted series, because I think that they spent a good amount of time in each game kind of developing, seeing how the relationship kind of grew over time, and I thought it was very, very genuine. I mean, you start off with Uncharted 1, and you know, there's some attraction there, but it's not full out, and then you go to Uncharted 2, and it definitely gets escalated, and then you go to Uncharted 3, and something happens, and then Uncharted 4, and the way it ends, I thought was absolutely perfect. I mean, if I was going to write a story about a couple that is developing over the course of a franchise, that is exactly how I would have ended it. So, yeah, I gotta say, I can't think of any other better genuine couple than Nathan Drake and Elena Fisher. Next question comes from Xboss, or Xbios123. I hope I said your name wrong. I'm a little terrible with names. And you are the first newbie of the episode. And you want to know, do I think there's a chance that Metal Gear Survive could be good? I could give a damn whether it's good or not, because I'm not going to play it. Just like Hideo Kojima has put the Metal Gear series behind him, I have done the same thing. Metal Gear, you know, the Metal Gear series will always be my favorite franchise of all time, but I don't need to see where it goes from this point on, because it no longer has the heart that made it such a great franchise. I mean, if anything, the Phantom Pain proved that. I don't even really consider that to be a real Kojima game after how badly Konami butchered it. I personally don't even view it as canon. I don't even like to acknowledge it as part of this series. As far as I know, there are only 4 numerical entries, and they are all good. So when it comes to Metal Gear Survive, I don't care. I mean, if you want to give it a chance and you want to see what Konami does with Hideo Kojima, if it being involved, that's fine with you. But you know, without his charm, it just will not feel like Metal Gear. And what the hell do zombies have to do with Metal Gear? I mean, you can't just slap zombies and everything and think it's going to work. I think it's just a stupid decision. Hopefully, I hope that one day Konami loses the rights to Metal Gear. They sell it to someone else who will, you know, you don't have to give it back to Hideo Kojima because he doesn't want to do it anymore, but give it to someone who actually knows how to make a competent story and actually cares about their franchises and cares about telling a good story, because I can tell you that is not what we're going to get from Konami moving forward. So, as far as I know, I could care less about Metal Gear Survive. The next question comes from Matthew Kelly. He wants to know, what is one thing that the Mass Effect trilogy did that had me wondering if that is a plot hole or not? Wouldn't necessarily say this is a plot hole, but it was really more of a story element that I was very just questionable about. And it happened in Mass Effect 3, and I believe it was the Leviathan DLC. I honestly don't understand what was the significance of the Leviathan. I mean, maybe some of you can explain it, but they hype this thing up so much, and then when you actually go to it, it's really not all that impressive. I mean, the most it does is it takes out one Reaper. I mean, big deal. We've taken down Reapers before. What makes you so impressive is that you dragged it underwater. And I just felt like it wasn't necessary. You could have taken that thing out and it wouldn't have changed anything. I don't even think it added anything to the main storyline. So I think that the whole Leviathan just story element I thought was just completely unnecessary, and it added nothing. I would say the other story, I would say the other DLC stories did add something to something that was already pre-existing in the Mass Effect storyline, but that's the one thing that just had no significance. So that's like the one thing I just kind of really questioned about. The next question comes from Brandon Williams. He wants to know, what games am I looking forward to at E3, and who will have the best E3 in my opinion? You know, in terms of who will have the best E3, we don't know. I'm not really looking for, I'm not even sure if Nintendo's going to have a panel. I'm not sure they had one last year. I'm not looking at what Microsoft is doing because I don't have an Xbox anymore. As far as I know, EA, I hope that they announce a Dead Space 4 because I certainly want one. Don't know what Bethesda is going to do. Don't know what Ubisoft's going to do. They're probably just going to announce the next Assassin's Creed, which we already know about. Hopefully, PlayStation just kind of announces more PlayStation exclusive titles. Maybe we get to see more footage of the next God of War game and get a release date. Maybe we see more gameplay of the next Final Fantasy game, Final Fantasy VII Remake. I mean, or an update on Kingdom Hearts. I mean, we know that they're not coming out this year, but maybe sometime next year. Just little stuff like that is what I'm most looking forward to at this year's E3. The next question comes from Michael Beelan. He wants to know, what are my favorite games of all time? I can't, even with a week to think about this one, I can't even really give you a solid list of my favorite games. I can tell you, however, what is the most important video game I've ever played, and that happens to be Final Fantasy VII. There is no other game that has influenced me more than that game. I mean, I would even say that was probably the very first story-driven game I'd ever played, and that kind of showed me the potential of what you could do in terms of storytelling wise in a video game, which up until that point I thought video games were just fun. But if it were not for that one game, I probably would not be the gamer I am today. I mean, most of my library is nothing but campaign or solo storylines. I mean, there's some multiplayer, yeah, but I always played my games always for the campaign and the story. And even if I've only played the game once or twice, or have no reason to go back to it. If I purchased it in a tier, then it must have had a really, really good story that I thought was really interesting. I mean, there's a couple of flaws here that I probably should have looked ahead or done more research before I picked it up. But for the most part, as long as the game had a really great story, that's all it really needs for me to get an approval. So yeah, I would say the most important video game of all time that I've ever played is Final Fantasy VII. The next question comes from Santiago Starpino, and he wants to know, have I seen the abridged series for Attack on Titan called Slap on Titan? Yes, I have seen it, and yes, it is absolutely hilarious. It's probably one of my favorite abridged series of all time. Probably, I would even go as far as to say it is my favorite abridged series. But, you know, we're not sure what's happening with it. I mean, it's been a whole year since the last episode came out. The last update that they did for it was like 5 months ago when they said it was delayed. So I don't know if something went wrong. I've not heard any updates. If there have been, please let me know. We're not sure if it's coming back, but if it's not, then, you know, then I'd say these 70 episodes were great because I always go back and rewatch them over and over again, and they keep getting funnier every time I see it. I mean, they're very quotable. I mean, I would even say that they're probably even more entertaining to watch than Attack on Titan themselves. As cool as the show as that is, Slap on Titan, it just adds so much more charm to it, which is why if it is over, then I'm sad to see it go. The next question comes from Gwen Justice04, the next newbie, and he wants to know, with superhero flicks becoming a much more stable genre in sense, do I think that we should have different types of heroes that aren't crafted for Marvel or DC, such as Hellboy and many others, or simply put, cinema's own superhero movies? I certainly wouldn't mind seeing hero movies that are based off people that aren't in DC or Marvel, but I think that's just a really tough sell, because I think one of the things you have to worry about is reputation and marketing. It's kind of hard to go to a studio and put like $100 million on a superhero movie for someone who's really not all that popular. Unless you find a way to make them popular, then you build up their fan base, and then you can have the big movie, because you can't just build it off a fan base alone. I mean, look at movies like Dredd. That was an incredible film, but it bombed at the box office. I mean, I would love to see them do a sequel to that movie, but it wasn't meant to be. If they were going to do movies like that, I don't think they should hit the cinemas. I think you should make maybe TV shows out of them, for starters, or even better yet, make a Netflix series out of them. I think that would even be better, because then you would have more time to develop them and probably build up your audience, and then maybe down the road you have a bigger cinematic movie experience. But yeah, I'm more than happy to see characters that are not part of Marvel or DC have their moment in the spotlight. Next question comes from JessieCom03, and he wants to know, if I were to be a monster killer, who would be my master, Deadpool or Dante? Well, Deadpool doesn't kill monsters, he kills demons. So, obviously I would have to go with Deadpool. I think Deadpool will just be a little bit more entertaining to learn from. I mean, he's hard enough to kill, and you have to remember that he did wipe out all of the heroes in the Marvel universe, which that was a fun read. So yeah, I'll probably go with Deadpool. The next newbie of the episode comes from K Prime. You want to know, is it possible to incorporate Shulk? I hope I said that right. I'm not sure if you meant to say She-Hulk, but I know She-Hulk is not part of Xenoblade, and just the way it spells, I'm like, how do you add an S to Hulk? So it's like Shulk. And you want to know if I could add this character to the Versus series because you'd like to see them go up against Final Fantasy characters. Well, I've never played Xenoblade Chronicles, and I don't know who this character is, and so I would pretty much have to do this from scratch. The thing about my Versus series is that every character I have used, I have had an extensive amount of time with the franchise and this character. This isn't just someone that I'm just researching for out of no reason. Every character I have spent many years with playing the game, spending a good amount of time playing the games over again, playing it different ways, seeing how they interact, and really getting to understand the character. There's a big difference between knowing the character and understanding. So to take someone from a franchise that I've never played would just take even more time, because I don't feel I would have the confidence to just say, follow my opinion just because I researched them. Every one of my opinions are on characters that I spent a good amount of developing my own personal opinion of them. And I don't think you can do that just out of sheer research. You have to have a personal experience with them. So it's very unlikely that anyone from Xenoblade Chronicles will ever be used in my Versus series maps. That doesn't mean that someone else can't do it. The next newbie goes by the name of Crazy Jackie. Interesting. You want to know, do I think that comedy can be subjective? Well, of course it can. It just depends on the joke, the point of the joke, and who is being told the joke. Because we all have our own different viewpoints of what we find is funny and what is not funny. So what would be funny to one person might not be funny to another. And so, yeah, absolutely, comedy can be totally subjective. And the last question, and the last newbie of the episode, comes from Venan Vaughn. I hope I said that right. You want to know, in terms of acting and lasting impression, who is better in my opinion, Carrie Fisher or Leonard Nimoy? Okay, I'm gonna come out and say it right now. I would say Leonard Nimoy hands down, because I was never a real Carrie Fisher fan. I'm sorry. Didn't really like Princess Leia. Didn't really care. And I think after Star Wars, what did Carrie Fisher really do? I mean, like literally before Star Wars, the last movie I saw her in was a cameo in Austin Powers. So don't know what she was doing all that time. And even in episode 7, I didn't really care much. So, I mean, I know that everyone was really devastated about our passing. I personally wasn't. I didn't lose any sleep. I was like, oh, well, that's just going to ruin the next couple of films, which I have no plan on seeing, mind you. But with Leonard Nimoy, I absolutely have much more in common with Spock. I mean, not just as an actor, because he did so much outside of just Star Trek. I mean, do some of you know that he was the voice of the King of Atlantis in the Disney movie Atlantis, The Lost Empire, which is one of my all-time favorite Disney films to this day. Highly underrated. And he was also the voice for Gandalf in the animated movie, which a lot of people don't even know about. So I think he did a lot more outside of Star Trek, and I think he had much more of an impact, at least for me. I mean, his whole thing, especially with Spock and thinking logically, is something I incorporate myself. I like to consider myself a very logical person. I'll even use that term logic very, very often in my conversations. So if I had to pick, yeah, I would definitely say that Leonard Nimoy was not only a better actor, but he had more of a lasting impact than Carrie Fisher. It's just my opinion. I know some people might disagree, but yeah, I would definitely go with Leonard Nimoy. And with that, those are all the questions you guys sent in for this episode. I'd like to thank you guys for making this episode possible. Now, I have a little bit of an announcement because chances are that this episode of Boost Questions will be the last one in this house, because next week I will be leaving to go overseas. So if you guys have any questions, you know, be sure to type them in the comments down below. But when I film them, I will be in another country, so maybe you might want to make them special and theme them. And I actually think that the next 2 episodes I will be overseas, so that will be even more special. And I even would say for one of those episodes, I may even have a special guest and another awesome YouTuber joining me, so I think that even make it even more better. So like always, if you guys like this episode of Other People's Questions, be sure to like, comment down below, and please subscribe to recommend future episodes of People's Questions. And like always, I want to thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I will see you next time.